This is a CBC podcast.
This podcast is an extended version of The Debaters, which may contain more mature themes. To stream the radio-friendly version of this episode, download the CBC Listen app or go to cbc.ca/The Debaters. And thanks for listening to the CBC.
Hey Canada, Ontonabe or not Ontonabe? That is the question. From the banks of the Ontonabe River in Peterborough, it's The Debaters! The Debaters, where comedians fight with facts and funny, and this audience picks the winner. Now here's a man whose jokes you can always take to the riverbank, Steve Patterson.
Hey! Hello, Canada! Welcome back to The Debaters. We are here in beautiful Peterborough, Ontario. Yes, listen to that. That's real Peterborough pride coming through. This is a city that has a rich history. It was right here in Peterborough at a place called the King George Tavern that music legend Stompin' Tom Connors got his nickname. Right? A waiter introduced him that way because of his tendency to stomp a hole in the stage during performances. Now, ironically, another fine Canadian musical icon also played the King George, but was somehow able to cause no damage to the stage. That icon, of course, Gordon Lightfoot. Now, let's hear a couple debaters stomp right through this debate. So, this comedian tried to repair credit cards through plastic surgery. It's that Canadian guy, Glenn Foster. Glenn Foster, Canadian comedy legend. We're welcoming him back as he takes the lectern to my left. And this comic stopped spending Halloween in the woods because he couldn't see the forest for the treats. It's Charlie Demers. Charlie Demers, one of our favorites, in his Kelly Green flat cap. Gentlemen, this is a good one, an important one for our times, and some would say one that should have been debated better during the leaders' debate. Carbon tax. There's a reason we're not doing this debate any further west than here. A carbon tax is a fee on carbon emitted from the manufacturing and use of fossil fuels. Of course, any new tax is going to be unpopular, like that old New Coke was. Remember that? So really, all the government has to do to sell this idea is to discontinue the new carbon tax and reintroduce it as Carbon Tax Classic. Right? And then everyone will be behind it, except Pepsi drinkers. But you can't convince Pepsi drinkers to do anything. We're not talking carbonation, we're talking carbon. So, whereas putting a price on carbon is shown to lower emissions, be it resolved that Canadians should embrace a carbon tax. Charlie, you are arguing for this, please. You have 2 minutes, starting now.
Thank you, Steve. Yep. It is such a pleasure to be here in beautiful Peterborough, Ontario, on the shores,
Wow.
on the shores of scenic Little Lake, or, as it will be known by the year 2030, Very Large Lake. I come from British Columbia, the first province to institute a carbon tax, and I don't say that to be all high and mighty, I'm just high. We didn't bring in a carbon tax because we're any better or more principled than the rest of the country. It's just that you can literally see the ocean from where we live. Granted, you can also see the ocean from Atlantic Canada, but they're less likely to be hit by a tsunami, and to be honest, their houses really aren't worth very much money.
Okay.
Ask any Swedish teenager and they'll tell you, we are in trouble. According to terrifying scientist David Suzuki, we have less than a dozen years to take serious and meaningful action to curb carbon emissions in order to avoid the worst outcomes of climate change. And why would he lie? He's on CBC. The fact is that our rapacious and unsustainable economy has distorted the price of carbon, making it seem cheap simply because its real costs are borne later. That's like feeding your family from a hotel minibar because they don't bring you a check. Our present model of industrial society is like a Ponzi scheme. If Ponzi schemes also lit your house on fire and killed tens of thousands of the elderly in dystopian summer heat waves. That's just not a joke. Sorry. These are bleak times. I have a 5-year-old daughter who says to me, is Donald Trump going to hurt her cousin who lives in the United States? He lives in San Francisco. She says, is Donald Trump going to hurt baby Jacob? And I say, sweetie, baby Jacob is surrounded by wildfires. A carbon tax is very simply a way of addressing the fundamental economic disconnect. Destructive social practices are rightly costly. That is why you had to pay to get in here tonight. Thank you.
Charlie Demers with some funny but sobering thoughts as to why all Canadians should embrace a carbon tax and why all Atlantic Canadians should be angry at him. Because I thought that was cheap shot, Charlie. Cheap shot.
No, cheap shack.
Cheap shack. Thank you, Charlie. Now, to tell us that he thinks the carbon tax is just a lot of hot air, it's the never taxing Glenn Foster.
Carbon taxes are like having your adult children move back home. They're going to drive up your expenses and they're never going to work. Here's the pitch. We want you to use less energy, so we're going to charge you more for it, but at the end of the year, you'll get some of that money back. Imagine if that was your stockbroker talking. Got a real hot tip for you today. Carbon taxes. However much you put in, at the end of the year, you get some of it back. Depending on your personal choices, you might even get back slightly more. Oh yeah? My personal choice is not to give you my money. The reality is that Canadians don't have a lot of choices. We live in a big, cold country. Admittedly, we'll soon be living in a big, warm country. But for now, charging us more to drive our cars and heat our homes, things we have to do, is not only unfair, it's un-Canadian. You might as well bring in a toque tax or charge me to put on my boots. The only thing more un-Canadian would be a tax on hockey sticks. By the way, Canada is committed to being completely toque-free by 2045. Worst of all, carbon taxes don't do anything to reduce the amount of pollution. They just make it more expensive. Well, there are plenty of people with money to burn. We're close to cottage country here. How often do you see some rich jackass bombing across the lake in a 40-foot cabin cruiser, literally, like my worthy opponent, being noxious and obnoxious at the same time? Meanwhile, I'm trying to decide if I should buy an outboard motor for the canoe or fill up my car so I can actually get to the cottage. Thank you.
Glenn Foster. Get ourselves a debate here, folks. It is time now for the bare knuckle round. We're debating if Canadians should embrace a carbon tax so your emissions, should you choose to accept them, is to fight till you're exhausted and your opponent is green with envy. So conserve your energy by using your natural debating resources. Diesel be the ideas that secure victory. But I'm warning you both that if you ignore my words, you'll end up looking fuelish. Basically, this debate is a mountain, and you both have to climb it.
Oh, man. Oh.
The audience has given me one.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Can I just ask you with the green hat over there,
Yeah.
fan of David Suzuki, like him, how far did you fly to do this debate?
Well, different. I'm getting paid a lot of money tonight. Well, okay, well, let me turn the tables a little bit. You know, you talked about the fear of attacks on hockey sticks. You know what I find helpful for the good old hockey game? The presence of ice. Frozen water.
Dry ice is another form of carbon dioxide, so not so bad, huh? But here's the thing. It's always about, creeping taxes, right? They start out with a carbon tax, and then pretty soon there's a hydrogen tax and a helium tax, and sure, it sounds funny.
Dude, what legit, true environmental point, there is a helium shortage globally right now. And partly it's because we never had just having some fun. Like, that's how easily we get into trouble.
The real culprit is oxygen. Carbon is not dangerous without it, and there are 2 oxygen molecules for every carbon molecule. I think that oxygen is the problem. I think there should be a tax on... I think people use too much, particularly my opponent.
Okay, that's the bare knuckle round. We've taken it from a carbon tax to an oxygen tax now. It is time now for the firing line. In my hand, I have a list of questions on carbon tax brought to you by a melting ice cap. Melting ice cap, what you get when you take too long to pick up your summer order at Tim Hortons. What accounts for findings that Canada's forests emit more carbon than they absorb? Charlie.
Because Canadian forests have pride. They're not looking for a carbon handout.
That was, for those listening, that was still Charlie. That was Glenn?
Flatulent lumberjacks.
You know what? I'm going to allow that. That is a good name, Flatulent Lumberjack.
It really does sound like a band that opened for the Tragically Hip.
You don't want to follow them, I'm telling you. The actual answer, Canada's forests emit more carbon than they absorb because of forest fires and insect infestations. I don't know how big these insects are. Finish this rhyming quote from Alberta Premier Jason Kenney about the carbon tax. It's all economic pain and no what?
It's all economic pain and no way Justin needs a second plane.
That's pretty good. Pretty good. The audience has given Glenn 1.5 for that. Jason Kenney said the carbon tax is all economic pain and no environmental gain.
That's why they call him the Johnny Cochran of the hard right. If the kids are gay, I'll have to say.
Final question. According to umanitoba.ca, between 1990 and 2009, greenhouse gas emissions from dairy cattle dropped 21% due to what? Charlie.
Lactose intolerance.
That's a 2-point answer right there. Glenn Foster.
The cows wanted a better life, so they moved to Vancouver.
I mean, the performance alone, I got to give a point there. No, Manitoba, between 90 and 2009, the greenhouse gas emissions from dairy cattle dropped 21% due to manure management. Yeah, and that is the firing line, everybody. It is just about time for our Peterborough Showplace Theatre audience to vote. But first, here again to tell us that the carbon tax is out of whack, it's the glorious and free Canadian guy, Glenn Foster.
The big selling point about the carbon tax is it's supposed to be revenue neutral. Yeah, right. You know the government isn't just going to build themselves a shiny new tax machine and leave it idling. And there's no guarantee they'll even use the money to save the planet. Oh, was that the Climate Emergency Fund? I thought that was for building hockey rinks for foreign dictators. Even if they were 100% above board, it's the government. The first people in history to lose money selling drugs. The government is going to restore the delicate balance of nature when they can't even balance a budget? We're going to fix the planet. Oh, yeah? Why don't you start by fixing the roads? Thank you.
Glenn Foster doesn't like the carbon tax, doesn't trust the government. Pretty good points. Now, to tell us that we shouldn't axe the carbon tax, it's more policy punchlines and facts from Charlie Demers.
Thank you, Steve. Listen, I mean, this is a comedy show, but very seriously, obviously, talk of a carbon tax has Alberta ready to leave the country. But there's also a downside. Look, carbon pricing has admittedly proven to be unpopular with many blue-collar voters. And I should say, I am a socialist. It's not my first preference for dealing with climate change either. I would much rather directly expropriate the running dog lackeys of the bourgeoisie, use their money and their prison labor to build a carbon-free energy grid, and then, when they began weeping, desalinate their tears to provide freshwater irrigation for troubled regions. But all in all, carbon taxes are a good compromise. It's everything the left wants, delivered by a flat tax to keep the right happy. Nobody's entirely enthusiastic about it, but it kind of works. Un-Canadian? What could be more Canadian than that? Thank you.
Charlie Demers. Good points on both sides. Equally passionate debates. I want to congratulate you both before the audience votes here. Nice job on both sides. All right. Now, time to vote by applause. Who thinks that Charlie's pro-carbon tax talk took this one? Charlie Demers. Riding his bike. He's doing an air bike. Okay. Wow. And who thinks Glenn's anti-carbon tax technique tore this one up? Glenn Foster, that Canadian guy. That's pretty close. That's pretty close. The winner, by a very slim margin in this one, is Charlie Demers. Let's keep the carbon tax. Big hand for Charlie Demers and that Canadian guy, Glenn Foster, everybody.
You're listening to The Debaters on CBC Radio. Want to be a part of the debating action? For tickets to an upcoming taping, visit cbc.ca/thedebaters. And now, back to Steve Patterson.
I'm Trina Winter.
And I'm Thomas LeBlanc.
Welcome to Chosen Family. Every second week, we talk about art, sexuality, and identity with a special guest. Usually queer, but not always.
I completely struggled coming out to my parents as a comedian. Being in the entertainment industry for Middle Eastern people is unheard of.
Affecting change requires people to shake it up.
Listen to Chosen Family wherever you get your podcasts.
What sign are you, by the way?
I'm an Aries.
Of course. I love it.
Hey, Peterborough, are you ready to meet your next pair of debaters? Yes! Good! This comic is happy that the vet gave his duck a clean bill of health. It's Peterborough's Todd Graham. Todd Graham, ladies and gentlemen. Coming to the stage, looks ready and surly. And this comic isn't sure how much sugar cereal she eats, but she's willing to Captain Crunch the numbers. It's Evany Rosen. Evany Rosen, and she's ready. Debaters, your topic is perfect for Peterborough, where time and money has been spent asking this very question. Does every city need a nickname or slogan? Now, not every town has a nickname posted on the sign when you're entering the city, but many European cities have different names in English than the locals refer to them. For instance, Munich is known as München, Prague is Praha, and Paris is... I actually have no idea, because the locals there wouldn't speak to me. But these two will talk to each other, so... Whereas they can attract visitors and bestow a sense of identity, be it resolved that every city needs a good slogan or nickname. Evany, you are arguing for this, please. You have 2 minutes, starting now.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you. Now listen, you guys are from Peterborough, yeah? Yeah. And you may be outside the ordinary, but you're also once the Electric City. Yeah. And no one one can take that away from you, no matter how much of a kind of a weird lie it sounds like. It's yours, because it used to be on the sign. That's cool. City slogans, they let travelers know what they're in for before they even set foot in the city limits. You know, you might think Forestville, California sounds like a beautiful place to visit. But they've wisely quashed tourism with their harsh and to-the-point slogan, Forestville, the poison oak capital of the world. Or what about travelers to Oshawa, Ontario? Yeah. They might not know how to mentally or physically ready themselves. But thankfully, they can be warned by the sign on the way in. Oshawa, prepare to be amazed. Without that slogan, visitors to Oshawa, one of Ontario's preeminent mid-size industrial suburbs, might go there without ever realizing they should be amazed even once. But I guess Todd is just the kind of no-soul freak that wants people to go to Oshawa and be underwhelmed. Well, to all three of our listeners in Oshawa, I won't let him bring you down. And if Las Vegas wants to just literally encourage tourists to commit crimes and not report them, that's fine. Because whatever happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. And what happens in this debate is that I'm going to make a lot of offside claims that Todd has no soul, kind of like a Dementor. So, good.
Ebony Rosen. She's all for towns and cities having slogans and nicknames. Now, to tell us that his slogan is that towns don't need one, it's friendly visitor and Peterborough native Todd Graham.
Peterborough. I used to live here. Would be a terrible city slogan. But I digress. Also bad. What I'm saying is that there is no end to the negative examples. How could something so flimsy be a catalyst for civic pride, let alone a tourist draw? No different than jazzing up your dating profile by holding a puppy. If you left it to a vote, every town slogan in Canada would be, "It is what it is." Which of course is translated from the Italian, "What are you going to do?" Some of you may have heard of a little burg down the road called Toronto, or some of you may know it as the center of the universe. But even that is a shared distinction with the sun. Also, Ebony is from there. Toronto, not the sun. Some nicknames are given with no effort. They're just abbreviations. Waterloo is sometimes referred to as the Loo. which really just seems like a pretty good indication that there are no British people living there. Hamilton is the Hammer. Winnipeg is called the Peg. Now I'd rather be a hammer than a peg. If I only could. I surely would. That's from a Simon and Garfunkel song,
Yes.
Steve.
Yes, it is. Yes.
They were the Hall & Oates of their day. What I'm saying is that slogans and nicknames are trouble. Trouble right here in Electric City. That's trouble with a capital T. Trouble. 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 That's all I have so far.
Okay. Todd Graham, ladies and gentlemen. Todd Graham says down with the slogans and nicknames. Time now for the bare knuckle round, or as I'll refer to it for this, the B-Knucks. We're debating if every city needs a slogan or nickname. So debaters, just a reminder that there will be no kowtowing to this audience. I want to see some brotherly love here, even though one of you is a sister, because even if you think you're a mile high above your opponent, people in glass houses shouldn't throw Cleveland rocks. Trademark my words. If you can, it won't just be Edmonton. That's the city of champions, or as Francophones refer to it, the city of mushrooms.
Ebony is right. I have no soul. I had to give that up when I left Peterborough. Not allowed to have a soul in Toronto.
That's not what you told me on the car ride on the way here.
Well, that was why I call my car Vegas.
Yeah, you can't keep saying that to young women that get in your car, Todd. You're a lovely guy, but it's not coming out how you think it is.
You said every town slogan in Canada could be "It is what it is," but you're glossing right over my favorite Ontario slogan, which is Barrie's slogan, which only makes sense when you're driving out of Barrie, because their slogan is just "Well played," which I think is wonderful.
That's pretty good.
That is very good.
Glad I talked you into it, Todd.
I saw Star Wars here in this theater.
That's it.
Honestly, that would be a great slogan for anything.
Todd, do you have anything about this debate, buddy?
Well, I don't see the point, really.
Okay, that's the bare knuckle round, everybody. We are debating city slogans and whether you need them here on The Debaters, where we also might not need that entire section, we're hoping. And it's time now to move on to the firing line. In my hand, I have a list of questions on city slogans and nicknames brought to you by the vacuum cleaner salespeople of Manhattan. Here for the city that never sweeps. In 2001, Ottawa unveiled a town slogan that was quickly discontinued. What was it? Todd?
It's not our fault.
The audience has given you 1.5 points for that. Ebony Rosen.
Where all your taxes go, thanks.
No, they thought it would be a good idea back in 2001 to go with the slogan, Ottawa, technically beautiful. Someone from outside of Ottawa had to point to them. That was just another way of saying ugly. What is the slogan for the town named Gas in Kansas? Ebony.
Whoever smelt us, dealt us.
I like that. That's good. 2 points. Todd?
Breathe deeply and count backward from 100. So, that's a sleepy town, all right.
The actual slogan for gas in Kansas is "Don't pass gas, stop and enjoy it." Pretty good. That's the firing line, everybody. Just about that magical time for our audience vote here again at the Showplace Theater in Peterborough. But first, here again to tell us that a slogan for a town only makes him frown, it's citizen of the world, Todd Graham.
Peterborough is still an electric city, but sure it's electric, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's current. When I was growing up here, the slogan was "I'd rather be in Peterborough," but most of the signage was here in town, so we just weren't really ever very sure where we were. But I know that the latest slogan is Peterborough outside the ordinary, which narrowly defeated Peterborough outside of Orono. What I'm saying is that no one goes to New York looking for apples anymore. Nothing has been easy in New Orleans for some time. So leave this branding to the short-term marketing activation experts and maybe get some more alligators for the zoo. Or hey, get a big statue of a fish. Maybe a fish holding a puppy. Also, Ebony is from Toronto.
Todd Graham, shots fired. Now, to tell us that from the Big Apple to the Big Easy, every town needs a nickname or a slogan, it's city dweller Ebony Rosen.
Guys, city slogans aren't hurting anyone. And frankly, saying that they are is insane. Okay, Todd is honestly maybe insane. You know what else is insane? Traveling to Berlin and not knowing if you're in Berlin, Germany or Berlin, New England. We've all had that recurring nightmare, am I right? But it's okay, all you have to do is breathe and look at the city slogan, Berlin, the geographic center of Connecticut, to know that you're in the wrong one. So in conclusion, I guess, nicknames are a fun and simple way to tell where you are, what's going on, and who you're dealing with. Which is why I, Ebony, your new best friend, maybe the winner of this debate, Rosen, is here in the Electric City making my case and advising you not to vote for Todd hasn't technically once refuted that he's not a bad guy from Harry Potter who sucks your soul out your mouth, Graham, so thank you.
Ebony Rosen. Ebony Rosen loves the fun of the slogans. Todd Graham is the opposite. Let's see what the audience thinks by applause. Who thinks that Ebony's pro-slogan sayings slayed this debate? Ebony Rosen. Some love for Ebony. And who thinks Todd's anti-slogan situation really said it all? Todd Graham. Well, it's pretty close. But I'm going to give this one to Todd Graham. Todd Graham wins it. No to city slogans. Big hand for Ebony Rosen and Todd Graham, everybody. That's all for this week. I'm Steve Patterson saying come visit Peterborough soon because it's outside the ordinary, and by ordinary we mean Lindsay. I'll argue with you again soon, Canada. Good night.
The Debaters is created by Richard Seid. This week's episode was produced by Graham Clark, Nicole Callender, Katie Ellen Humphreys, and Josh Bailey. With technical production by Doug Doctor, John McLean, and Kyle Katasowicz. Tracy Rideout is the executive producer of CBC Radio Comedy. And thanks to everyone at the Showplace Performance Center in Peterborough. Hey Debaters fans, be sure to follow us at CBC Debaters for tour dates and exclusive content. That's CBC Debaters on Facebook and Twitter.
For more CBC podcasts, go to cbc.ca/podcasts.